I've taken many journalists to the perimeters of that facility many, many times. I have seen things that initially I thought were very strange, but over the years I came to the conclusion that there was nothing weird going on. It's just a good old American technology.
Norio Hayakawa has seen some strange things in his years as a tour guide for major documentary and television broadcast companies. He has brought many filmmakers and news anchors behind the gates of some of the world's most sophisticated and secretive U.S. government research facilities, and was featured in the documentary Alien Intrusion. But more than that, Norio is also a Christian who shares the belief that this strange supernatural phenomenon seen mostly around these U.S. government facilities has an agenda behind it that's bigger than anyone realizes. Thanks for being on the show, Norio. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, Bradley, thank you so much, first of all, for having me on your program. And my name is Norio Hayakawa, and I'm a resident of the fascinating state of New Mexico, USA. And basically, I've been researching this strange topic of UFOs and the deception involving this topic for many, many years, actually, since 1961. So that's a long, long time. And in the course of all these studies for many, many years, in the late 1970s, I began to change my views on this entire topic of the UFO phenomenon. And especially beginning in the 1980s, I began to take a Christian point of view of this entire topic, and thus, even now, I come from basically a Christian viewpoint on this subject. I am a Christian. Actually, I consider myself a born-again Christian, and it is from this angle that I study this very strange but very important topic that could affect all of us because it's about the belief systems.
Have you been Christian your whole life?
Not really. I became a Christian when I went to New Mexico, where I now live, but the first time I went to New Mexico was in 1965, and it was towards the late 70s that I decided to put two and two together and began a new approach to this phenomenon. It was because in the late 1970s, I began to devour books written by great researchers such as Dr. Jacques Vallée and John A. Keel, who weren't outwardly professed Christians at all, but their viewpoint coincided with my viewpoint on this subject. What they have come, as far as their conclusion, is that this is definitely a matter of, spiritual deception or religious deception, I believe. And I maintain that that kind of belief actually later on started to affect me, and so even now I come from this basically Christian belief of this important topic.
Wow. Okay. All right. So how did you come across this? I know you read the books by who did you say they were again?
John A. Keel
John A. Keel.
and
Okay.
Dr. Jacques Vallée,
Jack
two of the
Boulay.
most well-known researchers that departed in the 1970s, the late 1970s. They departed from the traditional nuts and bolts explanations of the origins of the UFO phenomena, because until then, most people, most researchers who were into ufology only took the nuts and bolts extraterrestrial origin theory of the UFO phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
While these two great researchers broke from that tradition and began to say that there's more to this phenomenon than just the nuts and bolts phenomenon. It's a it's a very tricky, deceptive phenomenon that uh, could even be even close to some kind of a demonic phenomenon. So even though these two researchers were not the so-called Christian researchers, they fit in perfectly with the Christian viewpoint of today.
Very, very interesting. So they had books out. I'm guessing you read these books,
Yes.
and they what were and forgive me because I'm fairly new to this topic. I've been kind of lightly going over it for about 10 years, but not in depth that I have in these last 6 months or so. So I'm very curious. What were some of their main points in the books, if you don't mind, just briefly going over that?
Well, basically, their conclusion was that this phenomenon is, for the most part, a deceptive phenomenon originated by entities that are likely uh, extra dimensional and not physically extraterrestrial. And that coincides definitely with my belief, because even though I have studied this phenomenon for years and years, I have yet to see any actual empirical proof that there are physical UFOs operated by physical extraterrestrial biological entities. Absolutely no tangible proof of this.
That's really interesting you say that because just recently, Lou Elizondo, who I'm sure you've been following just as much as I have, has said that the government may or may not be in possession of or exotic material. So I'm really curious what he means by that, because everything he says, he has some understanding behind, but he can't say because of his security clearance. And so I'm fascinated to know the truth behind that too.
Well, basically, my opinion is that we have no knowledge, and I'm talking about the United States government. The United States government has no concrete idea of what this phenomenon is. And that is the reason why they have been hesitant to come up with any declarative statements saying that the UFOs are extraterrestrial spacecraft. In fact, zero evidence for it. Yet, the phenomenon itself exists or seem to exist. And so the reason why the Pentagon has not officially described these as UFOs, they just describe these as unidentified aerial phenomenon, UAP, and that's as far as they can come up with, because they are not even sure if these are objects even. So that's the main point, and I'm sure that Louis Luis Elizondo is just as confused as anybody else. There are many in the government that believe that, well, this phenomenon is more or less a deceptive uh, phenomenon orchestrated by unknown entities, which I describe as extra-dimensional paraphysical entities emanating not from far outer space, but right next to our physical dimension and coexist with us and have been coexisting for since the time immemorial. And this is my belief that these entities were the result of the cosmic rebellion that took place eons and eons ago in this universe that originated with Lucifer.
Yeah.
And that was the first revolt. And in this revolt that took place eons and eons ago, there were untold number of angelic entities in this cosmos that God had originally created. But because of this revolt, about or exactly 1/3 of the entire cosmic paraphysical entities sided with Lucifer in this revolt, and that was the beginning of everything that we see today.
Yeah. And so they're doing this one last deception, I guess, before the end of time.
Exactly, until Jesus comes and establishes the millennial kingdom. It is my belief that these entities, fallen entities, will do their utmost to deceive us all, and that deception is increasing, and it has increased, especially in this modern era that I believe began around 1947. And so this is my belief that it's really accelerating, because if you look at many secular polls, more and more people are beginning to believe in the existence of physical extraterrestrial beings coming here in their supposedly physical extraterrestrial spacecraft. And this belief is increasing. And it's my belief that in our modern era, everything started happening around 1947.
Yeah. Roswell, I guess that was the first one, huh?
Yes, and it's my belief that this whole thing may have been staged as an extraterrestrial event by these entities themselves.
Yeah.
To promote and to change our belief system little by little, and today in increasing, accelerating, rate.
Yeah, it seems that even the UFOologists that I talk to, they say that they want to believe. This is the common phrase: we want to believe. A belief is a spiritual held thing. It's a spiritual held theory, and so the UFO phenomenon is kind of its own religion.
Yes, it is, and as I said, UFOs have become the most, I would say, prolific religious movement. Actually, it's, I would say, it's almost like a cult. To believe in aliens and physical UFOs, this has become a cult of sort.
Absolutely. So tell me a little bit more about your work. You lived near some of these government facilities at one time. Is that right?
Yes, because I have lived in California for many, many years, and I'm very familiar with the defense industry in Southern California, such as the Edwards Air Force Base. I've visited that area many, many times because I was very much interested in military aviation. And so this is the reason why I became fascinated with facilities such as Area 51 in Nevada, which I since 1988, I became interested in that, and I have taken many journalists to the perimeters of that facility many, many times. I have seen things that initially I thought were very strange, but over the years I came to the conclusion that there was nothing weird going on. It's just a good old American technology. And so I am interested in the leading edge military technologies that our government has, and it's very important. And so this is the reason why I support facilities such as Area 51, Edwards Air Force Base and New Mexico, and all these important military locations, because with this tremendous area, the space-wise in New Mexico, this is a perfect location for many testing of military projects. And many people misunderstand military projects with secret, UFO cover-up. There's nothing like that, as far as I'm concerned. There's no intentional cover-up of UFO by the United States government, not at all, because the government itself still doesn't know exactly what this phenomenon is, and that's why they're reluctant to come up with any declaration, even though they have seen lots and lots of videos taken by military people like Navy pilots. Yet today they are unable to come up with any statements saying what these things are.
Yeah.
And so that's what I believe, that they will never come to any kind of a disclosure, because there's nothing that they can disclose, because they don't exactly know what this is without bringing in, religious interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm talking about Christian interpretation of this phenomena. The government is not going to come out with any religious type of explanation, because that's not their business.
Mm-hmm.
And so as long as the government doesn't come out and say that this is a very deceptive spiritual phenomenon and is deceiving a lot of people, nothing's going to happen.
Yeah.
And so until these entities themselves decide to reveal themselves, which they could in the future.
Yeah.
And that's where my Christian belief comes in, that I believe that in the distant future, there will come a time where things will be revealed, and it'll be too late for most people,
mm-hmm.
who will be led into the final deception.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying. And so while this is all happening, and while we understand the progress of events that are happening, the spiritual entities are hanging around military craft, especially the ones that are the most secretive, to aggravate the military and cause them to slowly reveal that there is something that they can't explain, to make it even more curious for the general public.
Yes.
and make it, because I believe that when this does come out, people are going to eat this stuff. They'll just eat this stuff. It'll be fantastic to them, because for the longest time it has been, they felt, covered up. But in fact, it's just the government saying, hey, politics, this isn't our jurisdiction. But now this is a big deal that's coming out.
Yes.
So it is a very fascinating topic, and I guess that's exactly why I have you on the show.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes, I came to the conclusion that this phenomenon seems to have the capability of intruding into our physical parameters, such as even radars.
Yeah.
And the only problem with this phenomenon is that this phenomenon is unable to survive in our physical dimension for too long. So, for a few seconds or a few minutes at a time. So we have to understand in depth what this phenomenon is. And this phenomenon is something that, even though it can affect our radar, it can cause also some physical, interference. This is why authors like Dr. Jacques Vallée have come to the conclusion that this is not an extraterrestrial physical phenomenon, but an unknown extra-dimensional phenomenon caused by unknown sentient extra-dimensional entities that have always coexisted with us.
Yeah,
especially after the fall of Lucifer.
The book says that after the fall, so it does go into spiritual.
No, both of the books by all of the books by Dr. Jacques Vallée, as well as John A. Keel, do not go into
spiritual topic.
Yes, Christian standpoint, but yet they say that this is almost a demonic phenomenon. They say that word without hesitancy. And so that's why I highly respect John A. Keel, the late John A. Keel, and Dr. Jacques Vallée, because they use the word demonic.
Yeah.
And which is very important. And a lot of people are afraid to use the word. And even some Christian ufologists are afraid to use the word demonic. And I'm not afraid to use this.
No, not at all. Yeah, I think that oftentimes it's very obvious to me that this thing's demonic, because number one, well, a lot of ufologists say that this thing is benevolent, but if you look at its characteristics, the Bible says by the fruits you will know them. And the fruits of this thing, if you follow it, is you got abductions that supposedly are taking people, but I believe it's more of a spiritual state. And the experience is not usually a good one. And then you got these supposed cattle mutilations and terrible things that happen to them that they say are around this type of sightings. And so I wonder if you put two and two together, that all this negativity around it has something to do with a very negative nature of the spirituality.
Yes,
and
that's true. But at the same time, we must not forget that there are also benevolent entities in this cosmos, because the Bible says that there are benevolent entities that are definitely opposed to the malevolent ones.
Absolutely.
The ratio, as far as I'm concerned, is for every malevolent entities in this entire cosmos, there are two benevolent ones, and the benevolent ones also have the capability of materializing physically, but it seems that they don't do that too often. And the ones that are materializing and deceiving people are the negative, malevolent, fallen entities. And they comprise 1/3 of the entire cosmic, extra-dimensional, paraphysical entities. And so we must not forget that there are benevolent entities, but I call these entities, well, they have been known to be as guardian angels.
Yes.
There are such things that, even though we don't see them, they have protected, they will continue to protect, people that, the Christian people, without being seen. So many times in my experiences, I have had many dangerous experiences, such as almost being killed by an automobile, auto accident, and many other times I have been saved, and I believe that this is because of the presence of guardian angels or benevolent ones that have, protected me. So even the Bible says that these entities, sometimes appear, but well, not too often, but they say that we entertain these ones without knowing what they are or who they are. But the ones that are causing problems and deceiving people are the ones that I call the negative, fallen entities.
Absolutely, absolutely, and yeah, it's fascinating. Previous video I did with the pastor, which is coming out very soon, if it's not out already by the time this airs, has said that oftentimes it's the only people, the only entities from outside this galaxy that really want to interfere or that want to intercede, I guess, with what's going on here, is the hospital staff, which is God and his angels, and the ones that don't want the hospital staff on board, which are the devil and his minions, or demons, I guess you can call them. And I want to give some legitimacy to what you're saying about the 1/3 to 2/3 ratio. I think that's in Revelation, the last book of the Bible, that says the dragon, which is a representation of Satan, swept 1/3 of the stars out of heaven. And stars, Revelation reveals, are the angels. And so it definitely was 1/3 to 2/3 ratio. So 1 to 2. Very good.
Exactly. And the other cogent reason for the belief held by myself, as well as many other Christian folks, is the fact that the Bible says that there are principalities and powers of the air. And this is very true, that after the fall, they were kicked out of their domain and thrown into this near our atmosphere. And so they, I believe, exist in the this area, principalities of the air and so on.
Yeah. So Satan is the prince of the air. Absolutely. That's what the Bible says. I wanted to so since you mentioned, and this is kind of a different topic. Sorry, I'm just remembering something I wanted to ask you. You had said that you don't believe that there is possibly the government in possession of anything organic, which makes sense. But it could also be a deception if it comes out someday that they did. I don't know. Nobody knows yet, except for maybe God and some people in the government, I guess. But I'm wondering, what are your thoughts on Bob Lazar? He's the guy, the physicist, that supposedly, according to his story, worked for the government on some of these ships, and he has some incredible stories.
Yes, I have actually in 1990 I met Bob Lazar at his residence, and because I took a Japanese TV crew to interview him at his residence in Las Vegas in 1990, and interviewed him for 3 hours. And he was the one who told me where to go that evening. It was on Wednesday, um, February the 21st, I believe. After we visited him, he said even though he didn't want to accompany us to the location, he told us where to go. And so the crew and I went to that exact isolated, desolate area of Nevada on Highway 375, known at that time, and then went to the exact spot, and we started setting up our cameras, and we did see some strange lights maneuvering over the Groom Mountains that covered Area 51 from a distance, so initially we thought he was, it was great, but later on I became convinced that there was nothing extraordinary about this thing being tested, because I started believing this is simply American technology. So I came to the conclusion that Bob Lazar, I hate to call him a fraud, but maybe there was a reason for him to say all these things. I can't, know for sure, but there's no alien technology whatsoever at Area 51, and that's my conclusion. But sometimes the Air Force and the military can use such belief systems to cover for more realistic projects that go on in those areas. They always have to have a cover story, and it's very possible that he was being used willingly or unwillingly. I'm not sure to participate in this kind of misconception.
Fascinating. Yeah, fascinating. I'm very curious too, and we may never know until we get to heaven. But I am very curious about his stories and the reasons behind them, if they are true or not. The one thing that fascinates me about it. Well, let me say this. He mentions that he wasn't at Area 51. He was at S4, which is built into a mountainside south of Area 51. But it's in the same area, so I guess Area 51 fits that description. But he said he saw up to 9 craft built into that hangar down there. It's anyway. I don't want to get off topic and too much into this, but it is a fascinating topic. I might do a video about it sometime, tying this with the spirituality that does exist in this world. But you took the crew down there. Did you see anything interesting at all?
Well, I actually didn't see anything interesting, even though initially I thought it was interesting. But after all, I came convinced that they were just testing the latest technologies, possibly even prototypes of unmanned surveillance platform and so on. So that was in 1990, and I'm still interested in this topic, but I don't see any credible evidence that Area 51 has anything to do with alien technology. Yes.
One thing that Lou Elizondo recently said, very recently, in fact, I think it was this last week, he said that a lot of and this is to your point, a lot of the cover-up has been due to financial interest, because there has been things that have happened. And now he didn't say specifically where, because he's trying to maintain his security clearance, but there has been things that have happened supposedly, let's say, in different well-known sites like Roswell, maybe, that became of a significant interest to people, and now there's huge economic things about this area that help that city, and so it would be in the best interest of people in that city, the governance there, and not only just that, just one example. And so he says, to reveal all this and people realize that some of this stuff was fake. and dare I say, and it might not be, but it might be, would anger a lot of people. But he says we need to have that conversation now before it rots any further. And I find that statement fascinating.
Yes, the reason I am very skeptical about the Roswell incident is that there's no way that a physical object or a physical entity can maintain its physicality by traveling at a high rate of speed from any point in the universe to this Earth. It's impossible without the absolutely fundamentally changing the physicality. And so this is the reason why, and many of the top scientists in this world also concur that the distance is one of the greatest problems of this belief that they have come here. It's just, unless they come here through yet unknown things like instant materialization, and this is what they are. Even though many people seem to claim to see these objects taking off in a distance at a high rate of speed, it's not that they are flying, it's just they are dematerializing. And so it's very important to get all these points, that this phenomenon has a capability of not coming here or flying here, but have the capability of suddenly materializing into this dimension temporarily at that. And so, I wrote an article saying that for some reason, this phenomenon is able to materialize and dematerialize and could appear to a pre-selected observer. And this is the reason why I came to the conclusion that not everybody sees these things. It's somehow, these things seem to appear to a pre-selected observer or group of observers at some pre-selected location for some strange reason or other. And so there are so many strange things about this phenomenon, but if people can read my article that I wrote about this very highly unusual aspect of this phenomenon, that it takes a form of a pre-selection. And I believe that people that are not shielded spiritually are very can be deceived by this phenomenon.
Right. Absolutely. Wow. Yeah. Where can people read that article that you?
People can read the article at my blog site, because I have written many articles about this entire phenomenon, as well as about Area 51, as well as about the so-called strange area of New Mexico, such as the Dulce area. But people can read about it by going to Norio Hayakawa wordpress.com.
Very good.
And, yes, and so I have written many fascinating articles, and I've posted a lot of fascinating things because I live in New Mexico and Albuquerque here. And Albuquerque is a location of a very important military testing area called the Manzano Sandia Base within the Kirtland Air Force Base. And so, it seems like everything seems to have happened around 1947, when the Department of the Air Force was created, as well as the Central Intelligence Agency was created, National Security Agency was created. All took place around 1947. And so I have lots of very relevant articles on my blog site that people can read, and all the answers that people are looking for could be found in some of these articles, and I encourage people to read it now, because I don't claim to know everything. In fact, far from it, but I'm very realistic in many ways, and I maintain both my two legs on the ground when I discuss all of these things. And so many of my writings and articles are based on what I perceive to be reality, physical reality. But in my articles, I admit that not everything in this world is physical only. There are many things in this world that we don't understand that exist. And this is where it's so important to maintain your Christian belief in all of this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And speaking of the spiritual versus physical, since we are both Christian, we talk about our basis is based on the Bible. What I think is fascinating about this whole topic is that these entities, angels, basically, some fallen, some not, can appear, and they can be physical or ethereal, I guess is the word, something that is not so physical. Or and we know that in the Bible because angels have appeared to men a long time ago, and they broke bread with them. Jesus ate fish after he was resurrected in his glorified body. And so it makes me wonder, to me, if these beings are or somehow can break the laws of physics through their spiritual realm, but they are physical, just like me, you and I, in some way.
This is the reason why I like to use the word paraphysical, which denotes both the physical and the non-physical and their ability to interchange at will, but the physicality of these entities do not last forever. In fact, their duration is very short, maybe a few seconds, a few minutes at most, for the most part. And so I encourage people to read these articles, especially about the pre-selection, because this is about deception. But, all of these things will be used in the distant future, when I believe that everything will be revealed, and there will be so-called terrible period that will come in the future that will deceive the entire world, and there will come one entity that will forcefully control everybody for a short period of time. And so I don't want to really get into this too much right now, but I'm a firm believer that in the future there will be a one world forced global governance, orchestrated by by Satan. And I don't know when that's going to be, but nobody knows that time. But I wouldn't be surprised if this thing happens in our generation or even earlier. Nobody knows except God. So we have to always be ready, and we have to wear this protection or spiritual protection, the armor. That's the only way to overcome this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Before that, we could be lifted up, and I believe so.
Wow. Fascinating. So more about your life bringing different people to these different government agencies or entities or facilities, I guess is the right word. Have you have you had any other experiences that are interesting while doing this that you can talk about?
Yes, because I live in New Mexico, and I know a lot of Native American people who live in New Mexico, especially in northern New Mexico. I have been dealing with the Jicarilla Apache people and their reservation in northern New Mexico, because for many, many years they have been strange incidences in these areas populated by Native American people that seem to experience strange phenomenon. And
Hmm.
I'm a firm believer that, yes, even though there may not be such thing as a physical underground uh, alien or U.S. collaborated alien base known as commonly or popularly as the Dulce base, there's no factual evidence that this base exists, but yet around that general area, there have been many reports of strange incidents of, unexplainable phenomena, such as people claiming to see strange entities like Bigfoot and, strange phenomenon like the skinwalker phenomenon, because this area is filled with cultural, spiritual belief of Native Americans, which border on the paranormal activity. And I believe in the existence of such things as the paranormal, because what else can one explain? And because I've seen a lot of people, I know a lot of Native American folks who have told me of their strange experiences living in that particular area of the Indian reservation called Dulce, who has encountered these entities, who have seen strange lights. But this location is richly, culturally rich and spiritually long held traditional spiritual belief that their ancestors had come from underground. And so this is a region that is filled with such things. So in this world, definitely there are strange areas that are manipulated by, paraphysical entities who conveniently bring and encourage their spiritual belief and traditions. And so I do believe that such things exist. So, as I told you many times, the only way to overcome all of this is to be spiritually protect yourself, and from with the spiritual shield, and by your Christian strong belief, and we will not be deceived.
Yeah.
But we have to admit all of these things, that these things exist, and because it says in the Bible that lack of knowledge can also put one into dangerous situations. And so that's why I believe that knowledge is very important, and knowledge that comes from God, and not false knowledge that comes from the other side. So that's my position right now.
Absolutely. Fascinating. Very, very good. Well, I was wondering if you had, as any closing remarks, any specific books, or you've already mentioned your blog, or any materials that you would recommend people review that they can get a hold of, or if they wanted to get a hold of you,
Yes.
how would they do that?
If they want to get a hold of me, all they have to do is just go to YouTube and type my name, Norio Hayakawa, on YouTube, and I have many, many, many short YouTube, presentations, and I try to make all my YouTubes less than 5 minutes long, and just to cover the main points. And I have lots and lots of YouTube presentations that some of them have nothing to do with the topic, but some of them have to do with the beauty of our state. But many of the topics that I discuss on YouTube are related to this phenomenon from a Christian viewpoint, even though I don't necessarily come out and say that this is a Christian viewpoint, but I try to give the suggestion that it is. And, you know, I was fortunate to be part of this great documentary called The Alien Intrusion by Gary Bates. And I think it's one of the most amazing video presentations that I have ever seen and that I have participated in. And I'm so thankful that God has, you know, put people like Gary Bates to bring this about, the people like Joseph Jordan and, you know, others. And so I'm proud to say that I'm not only proud, but I'm lucky to be associated with this movement so that we can spread this to the folks that still don't know what to think about it.
Very good. Yeah, that's right. I think Joe Jordan showed me that documentary. It was created in 2018, I believe.
Yes.
Called The Alien Intrusion. It's a Christian film documentary about what's going on, and it's really is fascinating.
It is
so
fascinating.
very good.
Anyway, Bradley, it's my great pleasure and honor to be on your program. I hope a lot of people will view this.
Absolutely, I hope so too. I think we need to spread the word about this, and I think it's a fascinating topic that needs more traction to prevent some dangerous perceptions that are going to happen at the end of time. Well, I appreciate you being on the show, and I thank you so much for being with us. And maybe if this thing grows and it gets more deceptive, I'll have you on the show later on.
Definitely, Bradley, and God bless you and your audience too.